Hey everybody, welcome back. It's MP here with our Season 8, Episode 4, The Last of the Starks review. I'm joined once again by these three amazing people. Introduce yourselves, please.
I'm DJ, as always.
Yeah, I think. I think you all know who we are by now, and if you don't, then that's just unfortunate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
Seems to be what we all
welcome, and you'll get to know us very, very swiftly. I would hope. So anyway, on with the show.
Is Claire, you guys were talking before I got here, so is Claire running things today?
Hopefully.
All right.
Okay. Well, first of all, apologies because I'm not feeling too good. I'm full of a cold, so I'll do my best.
Oh, no.
But I suppose we should start with our just overall general impressions and Meister's links on the chain out of 5. So who wants to start?
Well, I'll get us off to a cheery start.
Okay.
I'm gonna be contrary to my usual self and be critical of this because, in my view, this is the worst episode of the season. As far as I'm concerned, anyway. I think the caveat for that, as DJ has said on numerous occasions, is, and maybe someone else has said this. I think Duncan said this as well, which is that a bad episode of Thrones is still better than pretty much every other TV series that I can think of. So please don't take my criticism too harshly, because I still think that Thrones is the best TV show that's ever been made. I'm just not so sure anymore of whether D&D are largely responsible for that. As far as Maester's links go, I'd give it a 2, and I'll get on to my reasons why as we progress through the review.
DJ?
Okay.
Yep, that's pretty fair. I would say between 2 and 3, generally speaking. Maybe certain moments a little higher, but yeah, it's just I just think that the writing is apparently poor. It's clearly the case. So
Claire, do you want to go or you want me to go first?
I'll go. I'd say a 3 out of 5. Just, there were ups and downs, and you've got to put it into context, like Calum said, of the pitted against other TV shows and different series. Then it was great. It's departing so much from the source material and the original plot lines, even within its own creation in the show. We've had this, haven't we, as book readers, of that frustration from probably 4 or 5, at least 4 years ago, where things started to depart so much that it was like, okay, you either just rip the show to pieces, or you recognize that it is a different vehicle of telling this story. So that's the position I decided to adopt, so that I could kind of enjoy both things. But it's still frustrating, and you still have those snobby, book snobby moments. But now it's quite interesting to see that that's happening to show only Game of Thrones fans as well, where they're like, hang on a minute, that was never answered. You set that up, and that was, so there's that. It's kind of, it's interesting to see that show only watchers are going through a similar sort of frustration to us. I think one of the things that sort of negatively impacted on my experience this week, even before I watched the show, I was watching a live stream. I think it was Justin Thomas, Top Shelf Fandom, I think he is, on his channel. It was a really good live discussion on predictions for the next episode or the trailer or something like that. And some fucking idiot in the chat, because I just had the sort of live stream chat, said, and this was like a couple of hours before the episode, Euron kills Rhaegal, and Daenerys gets beheaded by the Mountain. Yeah. And I actually, it's, people say all kind of shit in live streams, but it was a couple of the moderators immediately said, spoil it, get this. And so as soon as that happened, I was like, oh, shit. Okay. I think I've just been massively spoiled by probably the two big things. So I ended up going to bed early, and Stuart watched it on his own. And I said to him in the morning, these are the two things that I know about spoilers. And he said, well, what were they? So I told him, and he said, well, do you want me to tell you? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And he said, okay, well, one of those things happens. So again, all the way through the episode, I'm like, right, okay, Rhaegal, that's the one thing that's happened, obviously. So when it got to the end, I was like, what the actual fuck? So it was both things. And so that whole experience, so I'm going to completely stay away from shit like that in the future, because it just really did. All I was doing was waiting for those spoilers to actually happen. So I didn't really get the proper impact of it. I mean, I didn't expect it to happen so early with Rhaegal. And I was just kind of like a bit deflated with the whole Miss Andy thing. So yeah, that's the first time really I think I've ever experienced sort of unwittingly being massively spoiled just before the episode. And it's like, it's fucking horrible actually. So I think that's probably just put a kind of strange veil across the week for me, because it was like, I didn't like that. I didn't like being spoiled. But if I do put that to one side, and I'm sorry I'm going on a little bit here, but I do have quite a bit to say just about how I feel their kind of general direction for this last season. And I truly believe that the writers just have massive fatigue at this point, and perhaps even the acting has been good, but I just get the impression, and that whole Starbucks fucking cup and everything like that just made me think there's, they've had a break for a year. They're probably all like, oh God, do we really have to, can we just not, and I just get that impression that they're kind of maybe not as passionate about it or putting as much effort into it. I don't know. It's just, and that Starbucks thing was like, really, there must have been, how many eyes were watching that, through the editing, really. So it just kind of made me think, I'm not so sure. And it's just, the writing is, again, as we said earlier before we went live, there's, they've not got the source material to rely on or hide behind.
When you say writing, are you meaning like the plots in general, or are you meaning like character dialogue as well?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I'm at the point now where I'm kind of thinking, oh, is this just me really searching and reaching to try and interpret a particular scene, or is that them deliberately doing? Like, for example, with Daenerys, when she's begging Dany, as she actually says, I beg you, she therefore becomes the beggar queen. So at this point, from all the kind of entitlement and mother of dragons and blah, 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 and what have you, she is now the self-proclaimed beggar queen. She's begging for it, basically. Please do not do this to me. Please don't do this. She is the beggar queen. Which you can look at that and think, yeah, that's really well done. I like the way they've done that. I like the way they've weaved that. But I'm like, really, or was that just completely by coincidence? And I'm just making something of it, and so yeah,
if I can jump off that real quick, I've been so I know a lot of people who are pure show watchers, and in chats I've been having with them recently. I've been saying, people in the battle episode, my mother was, saying, who's that Shireen lookalike girl that Varys is with? Like, what is she going to end up being? And I was basically like, why? Nothing is going to happen there. Right. Mm-hmm. We at this point, we need to be realistic and start tempering our expectations of how deep these people are digging at this point, because they're not. They're just trying to get this show done, right? We're on a 6-episode season, the final season. We just need to understand that is not what this show is attempting to do anymore. That's what the book does, and that's what the show originally was doing, because it was going off the source material. Those really deep, search for every clue kind of thing. But that is not what this show is anymore, and it hasn't been that for a couple of years. But it is way more apparent now than it ever has been.
I will jump. I haven't given my links yet. Sorry, Calum.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go. I'll give it a 3. I could have even given it a 4. I actually enjoyed a lot of the writing, and there are certain things that it is still doing, like just for a writing standpoint, when Tormund calls Jon like he's either a king or a madman, like that's smart writing right there, right? Because he's now a Targaryen, supposedly. So he's either going to be a king or a madman. I mean, I appreciate that stuff.
Yeah, I still like a lot of the dialogue, but
even that doesn't make sense though, because the whole point about the idea of Targaryens is that they are both kings and mad, or kings and.
Well, it's 50-50, right? It's you flip a coin, and whatever side it lands on is what they become.
The coin flip, if I remember correctly, is between madness and greatness, not between being a king and being mad. Because King Aerys was a king, and he was also. But I take the point.
Apples and oranges. Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, it was just I completely agree with DJ's point that he just made, and I kind of wanted to jump off that a little bit, because this point is twofold, and bear with me a second here, because I will be repeating myself just based on what I said before we went live. But there's a distinction to be made here between what the writers have to do now and what the writers had to do seasons 1 through 4. Seasons 1 through 4, they had the source material, even to an extent in season 5. They had the source material. So what their task effectively was, it wasn't necessarily to write a scene, it was to translate scenes from a book into TV show form. So it's a different skill. Whereas now they've been given an end point by George. George has given them, as we know, character end points. And the show writer's obligation has transformed into actually creating scenes from scratch, which get you to that end point. So it's a very different skill set. And I think that the issue we're having, to build on what DJ said earlier, was that in the first few seasons, when they were translating rather than creating, was what made Game of Thrones fantastic, which was the under the surface elements, the theories that can be drafted, the dialogue that can be dissected accurately to predict something. Whereas now, when they don't have the source material that goes behind the curtain and below the surface, it seems to me at least very superficial, very surface level compared to what it was before. And as well, it seems that I could be wrong on this, but they're trying to kind of bait us into thinking certain things. And to me, it's so plainly obvious that they're not gonna act on it. So the two prime examples are, they're trying to bait us into thinking that Daenerys is going to be the Mad Queen, and they're trying to bait us in thinking that Cersei is going to go back on, that Jaime has betrayed the North and is going back to Cersei. I think the obvious reality is, and again, maybe I'm wrong here, and if I am, then that's fine. The obvious reality to me is that Dany won't end up becoming the Mad Queen, or at least she'll be stopped by someone else, and Jaime is going back to finish Cersei rather than reunite. But it's just this kind of superficial baiting that they're trying to accomplish, which for me just isn't doing it. But yeah, that's as far as I have many other examples of bad writing, which we'll get to when we discuss the respective scenes. But from a general perspective, we can leave it there.
Yeah, well, I think you're probably right in regards to Jaime. I mean, personally, I think he is going back. He's going to talk with her, but in the end, things will change between them. But I don't think he's going down there to kill her in his mind right now. He's actually going down there to help.
Yeah, but from a plot perspective, though, rather than the character's mentality. But yes,
Danny's definitely going to lay siege to King's Landing.
Yes, but they're trying to paint her as though she's just going to kind of, turn into her father and burn everyone alive, and maybe she will. But and if that is what they go for, then even that's terrible because they haven't given themselves enough time to actually develop those character traits.
I think that's a big part of this is they have to just cram so much into such a tight amount of space that they don't have the proper time to develop things, right? These would, I think, a lot of the problems I have would be a lot better if they had the time to properly develop them out. Yeah.
If the last 2 seasons were 10 episodes long, it'd be a lot better. I fully believe that. I don't know why they shortened them. I have no idea. It makes no sense to me. Well, they have the money.
Yeah, here's what I'd say to that. Firstly, I completely agree. I think that the rushing that we have here and the bad writing is in large part due to the rushed season. However, that doesn't absolve them because one, they know the confines within which they are writing and they should adapt. And secondly, the show is so popular and so successful that if they wanted to, if the desire was there, then they could have had more episodes, presumably. I can't see why HBO would want to reduce, would be steadfast.
I don't either, except the thing is that they did. So I don't know if it's actors' contracts or what that made them do this. It makes zero sense to me. I have no idea why the reasoning is.
But again, yes, I agree. But again, the writers at this stage, they are aware of the confines within which they are operating, and they should know better than to try and cram into 2 episodes the deterioration of one's mind. I think there's a bit of a difference in the books because with George, he kind of expertly places various points of madness throughout Daenerys' arc, and then he'll, if that is the end arc for her, then he'll weave them all together in the way that he knows best. With the show, they're kind of just throwing it all at you at once and hoping that we don't realize that this is ridiculous.
Right.
But
True, but I think also show watchers do realize that, sorry, Claire, that Dany is always been a bit, egocentric. Like, I think people are aware of that. I don't think this turn is going to come as a shock to them.
No, but
I will take what is mine by fire and blood, I think has been a mantra for Daenerys over the years. Yeah. I think, look, you're absolutely right. There's a time issue for whatever reason. Yeah, I wish we'd have had more episodes and they'd have explored things a bit better, but we've not got that. So if I was in that position in the writer's room and somebody came to me and said, right, we need to wrap things up in the next season and we're going to have some kind of progression. What are we going to do with Daenerys? It wouldn't sound too implausible to me if somebody suggested, why don't we make Daenerys' storyline so that viewers, why don't we do that? Why don't we wrap this up in a little lesson, a message here, which is, people who want to eradicate tyranny can become tyrants themselves. How does that happen? Well, actually, there is, pulling on your heartstrings, there is this kind of conflict around, she's absolutely looks like, in a way you could argue quite sloppily, they're turning her into this furious mad queen. But because you've seen a story and a progression and everything that she's been through, and particularly how that's been ramped up in this last season with her treatment and reception in the north, there's a lot of things I can see both sides when it comes to Daenerys, and it's absolutely plausible to me if somebody said, look, one of the messages is this is to show you how a leader and a ruler can be mad, but how they arrived there and how they got there and how it's kind of plausible that can you see how that happened? And it's like, it doesn't take away the impact that, oh shit, we've now got a mad ruler or a mad, insane monarch or whatever. It doesn't help, but it kind of helps us to understand, and maybe it's a history lesson throughout the Targaryen heritage of, this is kind of feasible of how this has happened. It's not just like madness overnight. It's something that's built up and built up.
Sorry, Claire.
No, carry on. Yeah.
I was just gonna say what I kind of hope they're shooting for, rather than just portraying Danny in that way. I hope that they're shooting for the message that that you can find a balance in these two things, because I think they've also built John up over the years to be sort of to me, I think the Battle of the Bastards is probably the best portrayal of this, is when he ran forward with Rickon, which is clearly just a dumb, stupid mistake. He makes a lot of poor choices similar to the way Ned made poor choices, right? Where he does it based on these sort of ideals, right? But when you get these two sides together, the whatever, fire and ice, the sort of passion and desire, and when you get these two things together, there can actually be a pretty beautiful balance there. So what I'm hoping is that's what they're shooting for, and maybe at the end of this, I'll be much happier with the way those two collide. But it almost seems like they're at least not, it kind of seems like they're not going for that. It kind of seems like they're looking for more of a conflict between those two rather
Well, that's
than a
been set up,
unification.
isn't it, by Varys and when he's talking to Tyrion and saying, "Oh, vice versa," and they're like, "Well, maybe John will temper Daenerys," and it's pretty obvious who is. I mean, everybody's talking about how capable John is and is the male heir and blah 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 and what have you, but actually, he's not. You're absolutely right. He's not as politically savvy as Daenerys. Crazy as everyone thinks she is at the moment. Which
is actually more appealing to people like Varys in a way.
Yeah. Well, she's aware of what Sansa's position is. She was very astute actually with the whole, because John's like, "Look, you're my queen. I bent the knee. What more do you want?" And she's like, "It doesn't work like that, love. Even if whether you want it or not, I've seen how people feel about you, and that's you're taking what is mine and what has always belonged to me, and this isn't going to work." So yeah, it's
at this point, I don't know which direction they're going, but I hope they can rescue that particular storyline.
It really, I wouldn't have been surprised at the end of this episode if there was like a sudden killing of John, because that was the whole leaving Winterfell, and it's just like this. I mean, clearly there are going to be several characters that never go back to Winterfell. Arya said she's not planning on coming back. John, it seemed like all the kind of long, protracted goodbyes with Sam.
Sansa's line about our the men in my family don't do well in the South, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't think he's going to make it.
Question for you all: do you think any of the stragglers are going to be seen again? Like, are we going to see Sam again?
I would hope so.
Yeah, me too. I would be really upset if they don't show him.
If that's Sam's ending, then I'll be very, very, very disappointed.
Yeah. I did see an interview with the actress who plays Gilly, and she said that what's he called? John, who plays Sam, was on the show for longer. Like, basically, she finished before he did.
That's fine, because she's a minor character, isn't she?
That never happens. Huh? She finished before he did.
So John Bradley?
John Bradley.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sam has more to do, I would say. I would hope.
I think he does. I think he really does. What about Tormund? Is he done? Is that his exit?
I have a super unpopular opinion about Tormund. I mean, he's funny, but I sort of, at this point, this late in the show, put him in the same boat as Euron, where it's like he's just a one-dimensional, one-trick kind of pony. It's the same thing. He's just the rough barbarian dude who makes inappropriate comments and drinks a lot. That's all he is at this point, and that's fine. It's a little upsetting, because I think that he actually had more depth in previous seasons, but he has slowly over time become a one-dimensional character.
He's become sort of
a
weird reverse.
He's the comic relief and not much more at this stage. I agree. Speaking of sending people beyond the wall, I think we should address the elephant in the room at this junction, and just ask why the hell, after giving his all in the battle, Ghost didn't even get a single solitary pat
Yeah.
being sent away. I
The
mean,
direwolf in the room.
speaking of
So
gross
stupid.
injustice that plagues
Yeah.
Westeros, when a direwolf can risk its life for the preservation of its owner and not even get a pat, then that's an issue for me.
It's not even of its own, it's just of humans. He was fighting for humans.
Of its owner, sorry.
Oh, owner.
The
Okay.
ghost scenes are so bad.
Do we think Ghost is finished? I have a sneaky feeling that Ghost won't be following with Tormund forever and beyond. I think there's going to be a connection between Ghost and Nymeria potentially.
See, I would say that you're falling into the trap that I was mentioning earlier, where I think you're trying to read too deep into this.
Yeah,
I
maybe
just don't think they have the time. What I had a quick take, a hot take on this, because Tormund says, or I forget if it was, I think it was Tormund says a direwolf has no place in the South, and the note I wrote instead was a direwolf has no place in the show.
Yeah.
According to the budget, anyway.
Yep.
Can I, before we get on to scenes, unless anyone has anything to say on Ghost, can I just quickly address a theme which I think is interesting? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just because this show for me, this episode specifically, and I mentioned this in the previous review, this episode mirrors episode 2 in terms of its purpose in many ways, in that it is very character driven. It's very set up for the imminent carnage. But the interesting comparison here, which we can potentially jump off if this inspires any kind of thoughts, is that in episode 2, we had the key theme of relationships building. So we had Theon and Sansa, we had Arya and Gendry.
Okay, gotcha.
And Jamie and
reunifications.
Jamie and Brienne building relationships. And then in this episode, which was supposedly the mirror, we have the opposite, which is a theme of breaking up relationships. So Arya leaving the North, never coming back. Jamie leaving Brienne. Jon leaving Ghost. So we're having, the kind of the opposite effect, as it were, of building those relationships up just so we can break them apart.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's a good catch for sure. That's definitely happening. You're right.
I think there's also a lot of just Daenerys looking around the room at the feast at Winterfell, and it's like there's just so much mistrust and potential betrayal. And again, it's kind of like, I can see why this is all tipping her right over the edge into madness. It would be something where it's like, okay, we've got 2 episodes left. What we're going to do with Daenerys? Let's go this avenue.
Going towards Calum's theme, I mean, even the opening scene is about that. They're burning relationships.
Yeah.
One thing that I wonder if any of you knew this before. I'm sure somebody must have caught it eventually or at one point or another, but I never noticed it before. But when Jon gives his speech, which I think is a standard Night's Watch burial speech, well, at least like the ending part of it, where it's like, we will never see their like again. That's kind of funny because it means that they're not going to rise up and come back. So we're never going to see them again. I just thought that was rather neat. I never noticed that before.
Yeah, one thing I will say is it's really helpful that you mentioned that, actually, because one thing that this season has, which in my memory hasn't occurred in previous seasons, is an alteration of the intro. I mean, I think it has happened in major episodes. I think when the Greyjoys took Winterfell was changed in the intro, and there have been various kind of little intricate changes.
Sure.
But for the most part, the intro has stayed the same. In this season, it's changed episode on episode. But one thing that we mentioned in the previous, or maybe even the episode before, was that they had an opportunity in the intro because of the way that the kind of model of Westeros is set up, that the tiles that have turned blue to represent the White Walkers and their dominion over various parts of the north, being that they are tiles, they could be flipped back the other way to signify that they are no longer in control of those areas. And I'm wondering if the fact that they have refrained to do so is any kind of indication of anything, I suppose. Or is it just an oversight that they've, we'll just leave it in?
Yeah, I actually made a note of that too. I've also noticed that in each of the episodes, not only do they show changes, but they show changes that foreshadow something that will happen in this episode.
Roger that, yeah.
What was it this episode? I didn't pay much attention.
The pyres outside of Winterfell. They had the pyres.
Oh, were they there? Okay, cool. Cool.
The other thing I'll say is just because this one's for Calum, just because he's the one that I believe brought up the Night King still being around, potentially within somebody else.
Arya, yeah.
Well, that's who you say, I know, but I just want to, and that's not who this is about, but I do like this. Tormund says to Jon, you've got the North in you, the real North. I just want to point out that line. But
do you know what? If this story ends with Jon being the Night King, I'll be kind of happy.
Okay.
Because it works. It works, and it's not necessarily predictable. I mean, it is.
Well, there were allusions to something like that way early on. I don't know what, maybe episode or season 3 or 4, where Sam's talking and Johnny is like, "What are you gonna do? Stay in a frozen castle up in the north?" Like,
yeah, and also it would. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that's something I mentioned it in our review, probably with Clare way back when. That just seemed to me like that's referring to not Winterfell, but beyond the wall, like a frozen castle. Yeah. So,
however, I would still caution us that we may be digging again too deep. But
another thing, as well, very quickly, if that does happen, it would satisfy 2 threads that have been pulled on quite vociferously by the community. The first is, if I can actually remember them now, this is going to be embarrassing. The first is that it would explain why Jon was resurrected, or at least give some explanation, some kind of metaphysical mingling, as it were. And also, the second thread that it would kind of make whole is the relationship between Jon and the Night King, the various looks that they've shared, the various moments that they've had together, which many people complained of because they weren't, satisfied by Jon killing him. However, if he turns into him, then they will be tied up, which means that the writing isn't quite as bad as people at this juncture think.
There's definitely many ways that you could go with this still, and I never heard the Arya thing. Maybe you guys were talking earlier before I got here, but I
believe Calum said because he grabs her by the throat or whatever.
Well,
in our last review, gotcha.
It's her or Bran, maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the basic idea is, firstly, I think it would make sense if Arya. I mean, again, I don't think this is necessarily going to happen because I don't think the show has thought about this about the kind of stories this in depth. But it would make sense to me if this happens. Firstly, Arya tries to assassinate Cersei, and she is killed in the process by the Mountain, therefore setting up Clegane Bowl perfectly. It gives more emotion to the situation rather than just some undead guy fighting his brother. But they won't burn her for whatever reason. Maybe it happens in the heat of a battle or whatever. And because she's been touched by the Night King at the throat, coupled with her arc being intrinsically linked with the idea of death throughout the whole of the books and the show, it would make sense that all of those would be tied together by having her be the Night Queen moving forward, just to further extend and continue the legacy of the others. Because otherwise, very, very quickly, if this is the end of the others in episode 3 and that's it, then the prequel is completely obsolete, because who the hell cares what happened before when you know that this is how they end?
Gotcha. By the way, I just want to apologize again for being so late. I see Claire yawning. I'm so sorry, you guys.
It's okay.
She's falling asleep. It's okay.
No, I've forgotten now what I was going to say.
Welcome to Claire's nap time.
Arya.
2 hours on MP's channel.
I think there are absolutely, we will have to see some sort of a hint, even if it's just a suggestion at the end, maybe the last episode, that there will be when it's the words of House Stark, winter is coming, it's this perpetual thing, it's always this, it happens in cycles, Bran sees it all the time. living in the past, and it's not something that's enjoyable. He said, he's basically said, don't envy me. I'm not really here. I don't really have human needs and wants anymore. I'm just stuck in this spin cycle of looking at what happened in the past. And also just things like the the whole farewell speech that John gave, the fact that he used the words of the Night's Watch, and he again, and I know loads of people have talked about this many times about the words being the watches on the walls, plural, not wall, which just suggests that time and time again this has happened where perhaps the wall has fallen or a wall has fallen.
Okay. Yeah.
They then have to defend Winterfell. Winter is coming. We've all got to get to Winterfell and defend it, get on the walls at Winterfell and defend it. And then we have the speech after the battle where whoever says we will never forget them. Well, unfortunately, somehow you are forgetting them. Apart from now, maybe not, because you've got Bran and he lives in the past and he can zip back and say, "Whoa, no, this was from 120 years ago and this happened." So it is cyclical. Going way back to Jon and Ghost, there is some symbolism there about if Jon's sending his direwolf away, does that indicate imminent death for Jon? I think
so.
Yeah.
Go on. Does it? What's your opinion?
I think it's a bad omen. But I also think that in a way, as much as it seemed really awful and he never told him he was a good boy and all that kind of stuff, it's true, he does belong in the North, Ghost. He doesn't, he is of the true North. As is Jon, as indicated by Tom. And so I'd love to think that Jon eventually ends up going back to the true North and he ends up being, I don't know, like the next
Finds a fiery
Mad Raider, rebuilding the wall or something, like, who knows? But
that would certainly satisfy Danny as well.
Yeah.
If he would, because he would.
My argument about Jon sending Ghost away is the two that have died are Lady and Rob's direwolf, Greywind.
And Summer.
And Summer. Well, Summer was different because that kind of happened off camera. That's nothing. But Lady was chained up. Sansa did that. She chained him up to go run away with Joffrey. Didn't let her come with him. And Rob boxed up Greywind when he went to the wedding. So both those dogs were like trapped. Whereas Arya and Jon, their dogs are running free and they're still alive.
Right, I like that. It's very good imagery. I like that. Yeah,
I think Summer was trapped in the cave as well.
Yeah, when she was
on screen died defending Bloodraven from the Night King.
And we don't see Shaggy Dog die.
Shaggy Dog was what I was thinking about when I mentioned Summer, but yeah, Shaggy Dog and Rickon, that we don't see, but Summer, yes, we do see, and you're right, maybe that's a bit different. That was one but that's not in the books yet, so who knows how that actually plays out.
And also, Bran is no longer Bran, so their connection is no longer indicative as to the owner's life.
Well, Arya's sort of, I guess she's sort of come back around on that, but I was going to say Arya's fairly close to that too. She's sort of Arya, but not Arya.
Mm-hmm. But she's still the same kind of species, whereas Bran is literally, in his own words, kind of, not exactly, but he's kind of transcended into a different being. So therefore, it would make sense that connection with his direwolf would be severed. But
are you saying because Bran is now half wheelchair?
Mm-hmm.
But no, I really like that, Duncan. I really do. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's been something that I've said for years and years and years. Like, those two dogs were both contained, whereas the other ones, like Arya was the first that let her dog go and just chased it away, but the wolf was still free.
So what do you think of the ramifications then for Sansa? Do you think what's the point you're making for Sansa?
See, well, I don't know how it links to the human element of it, because Sansa's lived without Lady for so long, and she's actually grown. But the wolves themselves actually die as soon as you trap them.
Right.
Essentially, is what's happened.
Well, what
Oh,
I
sorry.
think
Yeah,
is
sorry. I thought you were.
Sansa lost a direwolf, but she gained a hound. And even when the hound isn't around her, she kind of channels his essence to give her some bravery. So he's kind of seen her through some difficult times, even when he's not been around. And she's kind of developed this, well, in the books especially, she's developed this sort of
Were you screaming for LaDonna at that scene, by the way?
Oh my god, I totally was. Yeah, let's do this. Let's go through the scenes now because there's definitely some stuff I want to dig into on that.
Just one quick thing. I've got to say this, and I know I'll mention it in the House Polished review as well. One of the things that John said when he was giving his speech harks back to White Harbour, the promise of the Manderleys in White Harbour when he said,
"Debt." I know exactly what you're talking about.
A debt that cannot be repaid.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered what that was. What is this thing that White Harbour owe the Starks? And it's got to have something to do with this cyclical. This has happened before. We've had many. Winter has fallen, a few times. So I think it's something to do with the Manderleys assisted the Starks way back sometime, and the Starks saved them from. And I know that they came up from the Mander and that they settled in White Harbour, but this debt that cannot be repaid, there's got to be some connection there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very briefly.
I know. I noted that the exact same thing. I was like, oh, finally they've said it. This debt that cannot be repaid.
Yeah. Very briefly, just before we get into the scenes, can we discuss Bran? Because I feel like it's kind of redundant at this point for his whole arc. Because effectively we have a guy here who can see into the past, and the reason I bring this up is because you mentioned this kind of cyclical cycle. Presumably he'll be able to see that then, or at least a certain portion of it. But it seems to me that they're just completely ruining the whole point of Bran even being there. He has all of this knowledge and all of this power, yet his most memorable line from the episode was him talking about a historical invention of a wheelchair. He based his wheelchair off the invention of some Targaryen 300 years ago or whatever. It's like,
yeah,
is that really the extent of?
That goes to the notion of. Sorry, that goes to the notion of Bran being the one that's always reliving his own life, and that's why he said that was my favorite. It's like that was his favorite. Like he was actually the Brandon Stark that had it.
You might be missing that. It could be that all 7 previous seasons were building up to this wheelchair. You might have just missed all the clues, Cal.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, there is an argument that Bran actually is the MVP, which sounds ridiculous because he just is sitting in a chair staring off into the distance. But what he's actually doing is making sure that everything leads up to what's happening in this moment. Because for example, maybe there's been every 1,000 years there's been a Night King and a 3-eyed raven or a 2-eyed budgie, as somebody said to me the other day, and Bran is the last green seer. So it was massive. It's on his shoulders to make sure that everything lines up, that person does this, that this is, I don't know how he's been able to manipulate things, but it's set to, like when he said to Theon, everything has led up to you being here in this moment, which is exactly where I needed you to be, because in the past it happened this way, and if it had only happened. So he's been doing all these kind of chess games and strategy in his mind about what patterns happened in the past. And that's going to be something like, well, would you share that with the people around you? Oh, right, okay, I know that this exact same thing happened 2,000 years ago, and what they did then was, because that's just going to blow people's minds. It's just going to mess up strategies. And so all he's going to be able to do is kind of very quietly work in the background to try to make sure that certain people are in certain places doing the right things at the right time. So
I suppose maybe if I mean we're not sure if he can see into the future, although there are definitely hints, given that he gave Arya the dagger in the place where she used it. But if he can, if that is to be indicative of his ability to see into the future,
but again, Calum, there is, you just, if you think about it, if you had the ability to be able to tap into the past at any time you wanted to, doesn't that almost by proxy give you some kind of idea of what might happen in the future? You've seen this happen so many times before.
Well, I think it's about noticing, recognizing patterns, and being able to predict where patterns are going.
No, the point I was making was in support of your point, which was that if he can see where it's going anywhere, then he might not. If he can see that they're going to be successful in the way that they were, then he wouldn't need to give them information that is superfluous to their requirements to win the battle anyway. So
yeah. Right, DJ, I agree. Let's get on with the scenes.
So that was my fault. Sorry.
We let's just kind of cover. There's 3 areas really. We've got Winterfell. What's happening in Winterfell? What's happening at Dragonstone, and what's happening at King's Landing. So let's just finish off Winterfell. We've done the farewell to the dead and the feast.
Sort of. I do want to make a couple really quick things, which is what happened to Mel's body. Because it's a throwaway thing, but it's just funny that they, Davos mentions her, but I don't know what happened to her body. Did she just turn to dust and blow away? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, you're right.
A
little bit strange that we didn't see like the old lady on the pyre either. Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention is just kind of cool. This is just if you know the Dothraki. Burn their dead. So even though they died in foreign lands, they were still burned per their own tradition, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yep.
Do you think that Gendry may start a war in the future over a Stark girl, like his dad?
I'm not worrying about that too much.
Not in the show, anyway. At least.
Yeah, definitely not. And I don't think in the books either. Maybe they'll allude to a feud starting, but I mean,
this is where we get into like what's going on with the writers, because it's like when Daenerys said, "Does anybody know? Anyone know?"
Was you're right though, Claire, and I think I did. I don't have notes. I didn't have time to make notes, but the Gendry Arya scene is kind of like the reverse of the Robert Lyanna scene, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he had about as much luck with Stark girls as his old man here.
And they compare Arya to Lyanna quite frequently.
Sure.
And they compare Gendry to Robert a lot, especially in the books, where Ned was like taken aback when he first sees him, because it's like seeing a young Robert again.
It's funny you mention the parallels between the two times, because on my first read through of the books, when I kind of discovered R + L = J, I always thought that Arya and Jon would end up together, which again would be another mirror imagery of Lyanna, because she rejects the Stark and then goes with the Targaryen. But I just can't see that being resolved in the show or even the books for that matter. But just an interesting point. When I was reading it, it seemed likely to me that would happen, although no, I don't think it's necessarily the case.
I would also like to point out that they got Gendry's name incorrectly, because he said, "I'm no longer Gendry Rivers, but he should be Gendry Waters."
Yeah.
So I just caught that.
That was a bit jarring for book readers.
Yeah. Only for the deepest of nerds.
Yeah.
It's with that though. It's really frustrating when they change things unnecessarily, like the Salt Throne and waters and rivers, and it's just like, would it be so difficult to just use the actual name that has been given to it by the books?
It's just that, like, I can't be bothered, or what's the bastard name? Anyone Rivers, that'll do. Yeah.
Something to do with water. Oh, it must be Rivers.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on Arya and Gendry?
Well, I have something on Arya, but not necessarily to do with Gendry. Just that the pure fucking inconsistency with regard to what she's doing and saying. On the one hand, she's saying to Jon that he needs to consider family and stay with the family and remove himself from the Targaryen stuff and don't go south. And then 5 minutes later, she's she's on her merry way south herself, abandoning her family and saying in no uncertain terms that she won't be returning.
That's great.
So where's the consistency here?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit to what Sansa says about the men in my family don't do so well when they go south, whereas the women maybe they do. I mean,
I'm sure she'll do perfectly fine, but the issue is she's saying to Jon, she's lamenting Jon's kind of I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I understand.
And then going off herself.
She loves Jon. She wants Jon to stay and be, Winterfell and everything like that. But at the same point, she's also the hero of Winterfell. She's the badass of the family now. Jon's nothing. Arya's the shit. So she's the one that should be going.
I think this is more about
her head.
it's very, very clear that Sansa and Arya are working together. They're exactly the same. We had a dress rehearsal of this with Littlefinger in the last season. It was all built up. We all thought they were going to hate each other, and actually, no, they're in complete cahoots together. It's like this power sister sibling thing going on at Winterfell. and I can't remember who it was. I think it was even Sansa just came straight out and said, "We do not trust the Dragon Queen." So Arya's going to take that as, right, okay, I agree with Sansa. There is somebody better than Daenerys. Who is this Dragon Queen? And they're all a bit bonkers anyway, the Targaryens. We've just found out that we've got Jon. He's ours. He's part of our family. But he's also Targaryen. This is a fucking fantastic way of being able to unite the realm and the north. And, we need so what do we need to do? We need to just eliminate this whole love story that's not going anywhere and get rid of this massive threat to what we feel should be happening, which is placing Jon on the throne. So maybe she isn't being that inconsistent with like sticking up for the Starks. And that's exactly what she's doing, is going to remove Daenerys to try and place Jon on the throne under orders and collusion with Sansa.
Maybe, but
I like that. My take on
definitely
that
don't
is
think
they
she's-
don't have time for that. I just don't think the show is gonna.
Also, can you imagine how awful, abysmal, just devastating it would be if Arya not only kills the Night King but also kills Dany? I mean, it would just be awful, wouldn't it?
They've never been in a scene together. They've never, even when Daenerys holds the glass up and says to Arya, the hero of Winterfell, Arya's not even there. So maybe there is something to that. They meet, but not under the circumstances that we all expect.
They had that one scene together where at least it was Jon and them, and then Arya stops Jon as he's leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they didn't.
Also, I would say similarly, has she been in any scenes with Cersei other than little things like that too?
Yeah, they're not directly talking to one another, but they're there in the same room with each other.
Yeah, and I think with Arya as well, from her character's perspective, she has gone to sleep every single night for the last 6-7 years saying Cersei's name. The passion within her.
Oh, that's her unfinished business. I've got no doubt. And what you were saying earlier, Calum, about there's some obvious things here that the writers are putting in place. Well, yeah, as show watchers, there's going to be people that will be frustrated if we don't get Wildfire, if we don't get Arya taking somebody's face and doing a faceless man thing. We're going to get disappointed. There'll be disappointment if typical things are being lined up. Cersei's got to go, the Mountain's got to go, Euron's got to go, and you also kind of thinking at the same time, so who's going to kill that? But well, it's kind of lining up like Arya's going to kill Cersei, Jon possibly is going to kill Euron. There's going to be Clegane Bowl. Who knows how that's going to go? But there'll be a twist on it. That's what it's going to be. Yeah, it'll be the obvious. It'll be how everything's been set up, but there'll be a twist. The interesting thing will be how we react to that. Is it a shit? Like, oh, that's predictable. You should have just stuck that up. How they're going to deal with it. It's all set up. You've got the betrayals. You've got the treason. You've got all the key components that you're expecting to see. So how's it going to be done? Leaving us with this satisfactory. Yeah, they've kind of wrapped things up. They've left a few bits and pieces for the I can't think of the word. The other show that they're doing.
Prequel.
The long
Prequel.
night.
Thank you. That's exactly the word that I was thinking of. And there's going to be some bittersweet elements, and I'm sure they'll also be like, oh, what was that about, and why was that ever set up and not resolved? That's just going to happen. It's going to, brace yourself. That's how it's going to be.
I got a perfect example of that from this episode. When I forget who even mentions it, I just have a note here that says, "Who the fuck is the new Prince of Dorne?"
Yeah.
They're just like, oh yeah, the new Prince of Dorne too. By the way,
just nonchalantly mentioning.
Yeah. We butchered that storyline, but no, it's still there. There's totally people down there.
I mean,
well, I am wondering, the Dorne. So, like, I mean, I don't know because it's so seemingly important within the books, but the people that Dany interacts with in Essos, if somebody from there has come over to lay claim to the throne of Dorne,
maybe
in some way or another.
Before we get too bogged down in predictions, though, we should hit more scenes.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to add, though, sorry, I've got to say this, but only because of what's she called? The sand snakes and the paramour of the Viper. Yeah, no men will ever. Basically, they were all kind of like, no men. That's it. It's going to be women. So why would there be a prince? It'd be more plausible if they said there was a new princess of Dawn.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning to, but they did say
I would have been happier if they just didn't ever mention Dorne again.
I'd be happier if they never mentioned Dawn at all.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
Dawn, for me, in the books, is the most interesting of all the Seven Kingdoms.
Totally.
I just couldn't believe the extent to which they butchered it in the show. I really couldn't.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So should we?
I still go by the notion that they're not spoiling anything of that aspect of the books, where that's why they just cut it right out and then said, we'll leave that to George. Let him have that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I just prefer not to have mentioned it.
I want to I want to discuss two scenes together because they kind of linked. Again, we're still in Winterfell.
Yeah.
This is the Jon and Daenerys scene, and kind of linking to that is the war plans, and then three really, the scene where they're in front of the weirwood. So it goes Jon and Daenerys, then the war plans, and then the scene where the reveal happens. So does anyone want to say anything about any of those three scenes?
I'll jump off you guys. I got no notes. So
no, I just love the idea of like, okay, don't tell anyone. Like, okay, I'm gonna tell two people like immediately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And then he's like, swear to me you won't tell people though. And they're like, okay, sure, but I'm gonna tell two people.
Yeah.
And I like how they have the direct count too. Like Varys already knows. Well,
8 people.
It's 8 people.
As far as sorry, go on.
I was just going to say there was something hilarious on Facebook this week where somebody had said on a scale of Ned Stark to Sansa Stark, how good are you at keeping a secret?
Yeah, exactly. So true.
Yeah. Like father, like daughter. One of them goes to the grave with his secret, whereas
I mean, like father,
any given opportunity.
Like Ned, like nephew too. To be fair, I mean, Jon just should have shut his fucking mouth. If it's like, no, Dany makes a perfectly valid point here, which is like, okay, if you really believe that you're okay with me being queen and you want to bend the knee, then you should just shut the fuck up. Why would you tell anyone? You know?
And that was the best line, I think, in the episode when Varys said, "How many people know?" 8. Right? Okay, that's not a secret anymore. It's information.
Yeah, it's a great line.
Fantastic. So we're left to kind of figure out ourselves what number is it between 2 and 8, where it changes from we can contain this secret and no one will ever find out, and it won't impact like Ned.
It's already over.
Yeah, it's done. It's done. It's done by 3, isn't it? Yeah.
I don't think there's necessarily a number. I think it just depends on who the second person is. You know, It could be 2, it could be 10. You know, but either way, it's a fantastic line.
Props to Sam, by the way. Sam doesn't break shit. He only told one person.
Yeah. Can we discuss the war plans, because this for me just really egregious writing. I think Danny should have said that the reason they're attacking King's Landing now is because there's only 2 episodes remaining in the season and we have to get finished. Because they've already said that Danny has support from the Iron Islands. She has the new Prince of Dawn's support. They know the extent of Cersei's army. It's not getting any bigger. If anything, Danny's army is gonna scale, you know, exponentially compared to Cersei's. Yet she just feels the need to attack instantly. I mean, it's just complete nonsense, isn't it? Really. I mean, let's be frank here. They're contained within the walls of King's Landing, for a start, for the most part, anyway. And all of these kingdoms are supposedly on Dany's side. So there's 2 possibilities here. Either A, the kingdoms aren't actually on her side, and she's being either deceived or being given false information. Or secondly, it's just completely ridiculous, because surely she just compile all of her allies, as has been the case in every battle in the history of ever, before, you know, going. But either way, I mean, I suppose I can leapfrog off that to the Rhaegal scene very quickly, because it all ties into the war plan.
Let's stick in Winterfell.
No, Calum, listen. No.
God.
Hold on to that,
Clare's
because
in control.
that's a different location. I want to know what you all think of that interaction. I want to know what you all think of that interaction between Jon and Daenerys, and what you think is in Jon's head now. Is he a Stark? Is he a Targaryen? Does he really genuinely, naively think that he can bend the knee and everything will be okay, and that there will be peace between his sisters and Daenerys?
I think he's naive enough to think that, because every indication is that he's as dumb as Ned in this regard.
He knows
he does what's expected of him at the moment, and then he switches and adapts to the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. He's not playing the game.
So he's not strategic. He's not politically savvy.
He never has been. He's never has been.
Yeah.
So therefore, would he make a good king?
Well,
yeah, I think he probably would. I think they've shown him to be a great leader.
Yeah, the issue I have is that him being king contravenes the very principle upon which this entire story is based. And the reason I say that is because, firstly, on the blurb of A Game of Thrones, the first novel, in very large font, it provides the quote, "When you play the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. There is no middle ground." Jon is trying to occupy that middle ground. So if he succeeds in doing so, then that quote was pointless.
I still think, personally, I think the whole point is that Jon wouldn't make a good king. Dany wouldn't make a good king. As a matter of fact, nobody makes a good king. Kings are shit. And
quite frankly,
I think the idea here is I don't know if the show will play with this, but I think the whole purpose is to show that people work best when people are working together, and it's not about one person making all the calls.
Right, listen, guys, I'm going to ask you a question each, okay?
Like
just
each
random, but it picks up some of the stuff that we're talking about in Winterfell. Right, Calum, do you think that Davos is now a believer in the Red God?
No, because by his own admission, he doesn't find any fruit when thinking about those issues. So I think he's just going to continue on with his life whilst remaining agnostic about it, frankly.
Okay. DJ, do you think there will be consequences for Sansa for oath breaking in front of the Heart Tree?
Oh, yeah. Actually, to be honest with you, I hadn't considered that. I mean, I think there's consequences to oath breaking everywhere, but I don't know if there'll be any specifically northern consequences, if that's what you mean. But certainly that's a theme throughout the series, is that people who break oaths tend to get some kind of repercussion.
Okay. And MP, do you think that Bronn will get Highgarden in the end?
Yes.
I want to talk about that so bad.
I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's just because I love the character, but I just don't want Bronn to die, and I think that he's gonna, finagle his way through everything. Yeah.
The bronze scene was the shining light for me, but I don't want to jump ahead. So
Okay, go ahead, DJ.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the bronze scene because first, I will say this is I've always enjoyed that character, and I think he has some of the best dialogue in the show, which is funny because we know he's just like a throwaway character, both in the books and in the show was supposed to be at least. But I think that I really liked the scene, but I still think it's an indication that they write good dialogue generally, but they write bad story as well. Because in what world does someone as intelligent as Bronn think that without ever meeting Dany and without fighting in her battles, he is somehow going to be awarded Highgarden? Like, in what world do you think that's going to make sense?
Well, his argument is, I've calculated it. I reckon the winning side will be the one that has got dragons. So I'm kind of going to hang around here and pick.
But he's not. He specifically said he's not going to in any way help. He said, "I'll come back when it's done." So, where, like, why would you think that Daenerys? Why would someone as intelligent as Bronn think I'm going to fuck off, and when I come back, Dany's going to give me Highgarden? Like, it doesn't matter who her hand is. Tyrion's a smart guy. He's clever and whatever, but there's no way Dany is going to hand Highgarden to someone she's never even fucking met and who did not help in any way during this.
Yeah, you're right.
I agree. I have a question on that scene that anyone can jump on, which is that if indeed there is an answer to be given, which is I thought that there might be some significance behind his line where he says that his fighting days are over, but he's got a few killing days left in him, or words to that effect. Any takers there?
No, I noted the line, but I have no idea to what he's referring. I mean, besides them themselves, but I mean, he's basically saying that to him straight up. Like, if you betray me, I'm going to kill you.
Maybe he'll kill Euron.
Yeah, you think Bronn? Well, see, I mean, I always wanted to watch that Hound versus the Bronn fight that they showed us back in season 2, right before Blackwater. Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen that. But I want to see him getting at least one good sword fight before this is said and done. I would love it. But as towards Highgarden, I think that he's just relying on Tyrion and Jaime and what they can say and say, I did this for them. They promised me this. This is my reward. And, Dany's given stuff up to nobodies before, so why not?
Yeah, but they usually do something for her. I just think it's insane to me to think that. I mean, when she asks, "Why am I giving Highgarden to this guy?" They're going to say, "Because he didn't kill us." Like,
I get it. I know, but that's again when you're digging too deep into it, and rather than just saying, "Okay." But I mean,
well,
yeah,
that's
no,
why
I get what you're saying.
I suppose as well. A Lannister always pays their debts.
Yeah,
but a Targaryen doesn't.
Right? Yeah, good calendar.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to maybe
he's got his own. Bronn being smart as he is, maybe he's got his own agenda, anyways, and maybe he doesn't think Dany's going to win, but he believes that Tyrion and Jaime will still be alive at the end of this.
Well, either
maybe
way,
he knows something we don't.
Yeah. Either way, it's not the Targaryens' debt to pay necessarily, but yeah. Either way, we can move on now because I can tell Claire is just becoming anguish with our extended.
Yeah, she's just showing us her fingernails at this point.
I'm just texting my sister. Sorry, she's texting me asking if I want to go. So I'm just trying to sort out my social life in the middle of this.
So is your entire family awake at this hour, or is that a regular occurrence?
Tell people what hour it is right now, guys, and where you are.
It's 20 to 2.
Prefer not
1:38 a.m. Right. The only thing that I've got left, really, that I've not got a massive amount to say really on this, because this for me is where the writers have really let one of my favourite characters down. Brienne and Jaime go.
I'll tell you. Okay, so this is how it's going to go down. Brienne's going to follow Jaime. She's going to talk to Sansa. Maybe Sansa goes with. I don't know, because something we can't have seen the last of Sansa, and it can't just be a cleanup in the north and her doing whatever. She has to play a role somewhere. Brienne's at least going to follow after Jaime somehow. Pod's going with her. Clegane Bowl is going to happen. Brienne's going to save Sandor. This is my prediction. Brienne's the one that kills the mountain. I've always thought that. And then her and the Hound live happily ever after.
Mhm.
Yep.
Here's my question, because you mentioned Jaime. Again, this could just be kind of pushed aside by bad writing. But if they're actually going to be congruent with what they've established so far, they've set a perimeter around King's Landing with Dany's army. More men are coming. How does Jaime intend to actually get in without having to go through Dany's army first? You know, I mean, I just don't understand the plan there. He knows that they're trying to starve the man.
So in the books too, like one man can navigate better than a whole army, right? They can sneak through by themselves rather than men.
But he's but I mean, the two counterpoints to that, although I think that's a good point. Is that the first thing?
He's been with the army before. If they don't know that, like he can just walk by any random dudes and they've seen him before, and they can just let him walk on by. Felt like.
Maybe, but I don't know.
I've got a better answer. I think this is probably more accurate. Is that Jaime will teleport directly inside the castle?
Yeah, probably.
Definitely more accurate.
There could be
I bet you what'll happen is they'll show the place where Tyrion and Gendry went with Davos, that smugglers thing, and maybe Jaime will enter in that way.
That's kind of a branch of the tree I was thinking, which is that again on this idea of mirror imagery, which is just so prevalent in this season. We might have a situation where Tyrion gets Jaime into King's Landing, as Jaime got Tyrion out of King's Landing previously.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Sure.
But we'll see.
No, I'm going with teleportation, but that's just me.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of evidence for that. So
no, strong argument, DJ, for sure.
Predictions based on past events, you know.
Quite. Is Claire here or is she?
I will say.
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. I just wanted to add.
I know, Claire, you wanted to talk about the Brienne Jaime thing. The only thing I'll say is I did laugh like out loud when Jaime just kept being like, "It's so hot in here." That did make me crack up.
It was. I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I thought just everything about the whole drinking game. Obviously Dany looking over, and it's like, okay, those the two Lannister boys. I mean, the whole scene with Bran. I think just one of them's going to have to die, Jaime or Tyrion. One of the Lannister boys is definitely over. But let me just finish. Hang on.
I heard Marlon.
Brienne and Jaime. It's because he wants a crisp. There you go.
He was yawning.
He was, but he's also whining for beef crisp.
Because he's tired of not having crisps, obviously.
He is, yeah. I just didn't like it. I thought it was really cheesy. I thought they massively cheapening Brienne's character and the development of her character. They're just shitting all over it, to be honest with you. The fact that she was crying and it was disappointing. I do think that he didn't, this is something that he's going to kill her, not be with her. And he just is trying to protect Brienne by saying those horrible things. I mean, it was a confession, I guess. But also he's saying that to try and push her, pushing her away. I kind of think that probably MP is right. That I hope that they save Brienne's character's agency by having her do something that's kind of heroic again and being a bit more like Brienne. I think she should have died in the battle, which is really awful of me to say. She's one of my favourite characters, but yeah.
Going back to her old review, is I do think her arc fulfillment is becoming a member of the Kingsguard, if there is such a thing at the end of this. But I feel like there is going to be.
No, her character arc ended when she became a knight, and then it was cheapened by her becoming a
She
fucking one night
still
stand.
has to do
Yeah,
what Duncan the Tall did, and he was the leader of the Kingsguard. So she will do that, and she'll be leader of the probably Queensguard.
Yeah, I agree with Claire on this in that I don't think every character, and this is particularly prominent for female characters more so than male, I don't think every character needs to be sexualized, frankly. Brienne's
Thank
arc,
you, Calum. Thank you.
Brienne's arc doesn't need sex to be fulfilled. And she was knighted in the previous in a couple of episodes ago.
I don't think it has anything to do with sex. I think it has to do with love and the things that you go through and for love. It's different. I don't think it has anything to do with sex. Yeah, she got laid, but that's just because she's in love with Jamie, and that's something that he wanted. I don't think it has anything to do with sex. I don't think she's been sexualized at all.
I actually kind of agree with MP on that. Yeah, I didn't mind that at all. First of all, everybody has some kind of sexual drive, so I think
Sure.
and hers is mentioned even in the books. It's strongly hinted at that she's a virgin, and that's part of her story as well.
Listen, if she was going to give it up, she should have given it to Tormund, because that would have
Oh my God, really?
That would have strengthened the wildlings' relationship with Winterfell and the North. It would have kept that relationship
but that's making
going.
her go against her heart.
Yeah, you're out of your fucking mind.
It's not the issue. It's not the issue of her making love to another character that's the issue. The problem is the fact that she was used as a plot device so that Jamie could discover that he needs, to finish his business with another woman, and they did that. And they did that via a one night stand, and then have her crying at his heel while he rides off. It's completely smashing her character.
Also set up to be in the story, though. This is why I don't think that Brienne's ever going to end up with Jamie. I know Claire thinks, she likes the pretty boys. That's why she liked Renly, and that's why she likes Jamie. But her arc and the Hound's arc is why I always ship them together, is they're the exact same people. They're always alone by themselves doing what's right, even though they have different objectives towards it. And I've always, the one like Clean Game Bowl vision that we get within the books is, I think the one that comes in is Brienne that saves the Hound at the end of that. I just fully believe that.
But yeah, I mean,
you know what? I'd be curious to see if you guys still feel like that if we get more Brienne here.
I think we have to.
I certainly think she's still going to play a role. So I don't think her story ends with her, being part of a plot device, as you said, Calum.
Yeah.
No, that's not her end, but she was still used in that way, in my opinion.
I don't really have a problem with the way that was done, because I also think that in a way, Jamie was a plot device to show that she had not been opening up to people forever. She finally did, and she got fucking burned for it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I think that plays into her as well, personally.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I think there's so much more to be said about, like, in the books, I can see this all playing out pretty much identically.
God, I hope not.
Fucking hell, I hope not. Jesus.
Just
maybe
like
not
it
that
is in the show.
I see her having sex with Jamie, or Jamie having sex with her, and then leaving her. I can see that absolutely happening, and her heartbreaking. But we'll get so much more from the books. Like, we'll know what's going on within each person's probably perception, POV, and it'll mean so much more. But right now, it is what we saw. They banged, Jamie left, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
we don't get the inner monologue.
Absolutely.
Okay, listen. Let's very quickly cover the only thing that's left to talk about in Winterfell before we move to Dragonstone. And Winterfell was the main part of the episode, so we can finish probably quite quickly with the other two locations. But Sansa and Tyrion in Winterfell. So
refresh my memory.
This is where Tyrion Tyrion tells Sansa that he believes in Daenerys. Why do you have to feel this way about her? I'd be much more comfortable if you were gal pals and, you know, you were left as this kind of power. There's a bit of a power vacuum in the north. You could fill that void. And this is when Sansa says, well, actually, hang on, what if there's somebody better? So, what do you think might be happening there? Do you think that, well, I mean, he's been put in a position, isn't he, where he's going to have to choose a side?
Yeah. Well, I think that they're building on Tyrion and Sansa's relationship and kind of, at least in some sense, hinting at a potential marriage there between.
I mean, they're already married, but...
Well, I suppose a reconvening of their vows then, shall we say. But I think that might be a little bit too fairy tale for this show. It would satisfy me, personally, because I quite like it. It would
satisfy me, too. I've always shipped them together, too. Just because if Sansa's like Ned, she's married, Tyrion's a good dude. Just like Ned and Catelyn, they can grow to love each other in that end. And like Sansa said, he was the best out of all of them.
I think Sansa can recognise. Sansa is now savvy enough, or so she's being presented as such, as being able to appreciate a political marriage, maybe even based on some fondness there.
I would go further too and say Tyrion also recognizes her as a woman. When they were originally married, she was still a little girl, which is why he had so much problems trying to, consecrate the marriage. But now she is a woman fully realized or whatever.
And I think the dialogue is straight from both the show and the books. But Tyrion tells her, "I will never ask you to sleep with me until you ask me to." That's a little bit foreshadowing.
Also, I think that it kind of instantiates the journey that Sansa's character has gone on, because when she was younger and a child, she had these dreams of a gallant prince that she'd ride off with, and this point is kind of more prominent in the books, just because of how ugly Tyrion is in the books compared to the show. I mean, Peter Dinklage is by all means a very handsome dude, whereas in the books Tyrion is described as being hideously ugly.
Missing a fucking nose.
But
got two different colored eyes.
I think Peter Dinklage is dreamy.
Yeah, but by having Sansa and Tyrion end up together, for lack of a better term, that would kind of exemplify the progression of Sansa's character in a very succinct and profound way.
And it goes towards things that are more important than superficial beauty and dreams and stuff like that. Yeah.
Which is a big learning point for Sansa. That's something that she's had to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can
She used to love Loras, who is as unobtainable as a man can get for her. And
which is like Brienne and Renly too, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to move us on to Dragonstone. So,
oh god,
did anything big happen here?
It shouldn't.
So Daenerys arrives on Drogon. Rhaegal gets shot down by this surprise Iron Fleet.
Surprise!
Yeah, that was some pretty bad shit right there. These boats just all of a sudden show up. We didn't see them from like miles away.
Let me just finish fucking describing the location. Jesus.
Sorry.
Okay, then the Iron Fleet bombard the crap out of the party that's landing on Dragonstone. They get washed up on the beach. And there's some plotting in the throne room at Dragonstone between Varys mainly, but Varys and Tyrion. So okay, so let's go back to that scene, to Rhaegal.
Can I go first on this, because it's been welling up inside of me for the last hour and a half, and it needs to come out like a smoldering rage.
Okay.
Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to provide the answer. So the question is, what the fuck was Dany thinking? Right? Didn't fancy sending a scout. Has no control over her supposed territorial waters. Can't see the ships from the air, but the ships can see her. I mean, all of this is nonsense. And here's
they hit her.
One second. That's the question. Here's the answer. Because I don't usually do this, but I went into the whatever it's called, beyond the episode or whatever, where the showrunners are interviewed, and the showrunners, and I could not believe this. I was incredulous upon hearing this. The showrunners said Dany forgot about Euron's fleet, and at that point, I just thought this is just too far beyond. I'll finish on this point. I've always, because Claire mentioned this earlier, I've always had the view that the show and the books are just two different mechanisms by which to tell the same story, right? So two different historical accounts, as it were. And I've had that view up until very recently. Now I think it's very difficult to argue anything other than this show being a bastardized version of the books. And as I mentioned in the previous video, and agreed with someone else in the comments as well, this show, if anything, the response I've had is it's completely reinvigorated my passion for the books, because I want to know the real ending. I want to know, I want to be aware and be privy to how this masterpiece is actually going to be concluded, because this just cannot be anything close.
It could be a really
I could go on.
Whole thing could be a really clever way of George R.R. Martin driving more people towards the books on a massive scale, because you can retell 60% of my story. I'll drop a few clues in there. See what you make of it yourself, because I've not even finished the books yet. So, give it a go, knowing, because he's from a TV producer background, that they'll fuck it up inevitably. And what will happen is you'll have millions of show watchers going, but what? But how? Okay, I'm going to need to go and read the books. I am so obsessed with getting the answers that apparently are supposed to be, at least there are deeper clues in the books. Then I'm going to go. Tons of people have said to me that are show watchers only that I've just ordered the whole series of books.
Most of them probably still won't be able to read them all. It's I know a lot of people who've started the books who it's not a light series.
I got like a 6th-year closing in on maybe mid-60s lady at work reading the books now, so I'm happy about that. Yeah.
How did your nephew go?
She's already like, it took her about a week to get through Game of Thrones, and she's like texting me and messaging me nonstop. She's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So I told her just to read it first, and then go back for your second take, and then you can go down the rabbit hole.
So let me
join a cult.
Yeah, well, that's what happened.
One of us.
Yeah.
So let me just throw this out there, because I think that there was such an easy. Nothing for how. First, I think what they were attempting to do with the Rhaegal thing was reclaim some of the shock value of these deaths that, like the Red Wedding, people were like, what? How did that happen? But they did it so poorly. And I think that one thing could have helped this scene a lot. Maybe not the Rhaegal thing, but as far as them being ambushed like that, all they needed to do was not have it take place at Dragonstone. If this happened somewhere like out in the ocean, it would have instantly made way more sense that they wouldn't have seen it coming. It still isn't exactly brilliant, but at least then you could be like, oh, well, we didn't send scouts to my home base.
Yeah. And that nobody was that, and we just left unoccupied. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that they hit him with the first shot.
Oh, the first 3 shots, you mean?
Yeah, the first 3, and then they missed everyone after that when they were shooting at her.
I'm going to temper this by just throwing a few things out there that I'm not saying I necessarily believe in, but just to provide a little bit of balance. So, what if The Iron Fleet were originally hiding behind the rocks at the back of Dragonstone. It wasn't an aerial view that necessarily she would have seen. I get that the showrunners have said she forgot. Maybe they're just being really sloppy and lazy there with themselves. Who knows? But you could also say that Rhaegal was injured. You could see he wasn't flying very well. So he was off balance anyway. So he would have been an easier target. You could also say that Daenerys was consumed with other matters and not expecting, because I got confused watching the episode thinking, are they at King's, is this happening at King's Landing? Are they washing up on the shore at King's Landing because of the whole Missandei teleportation thing? Obviously she got captured by the Iron Fleet and they took her back to King's Landing.
How, by the way?
Yeah, exactly. But she could have just been not expecting, not really looking out or expecting to see them there. I also think I thought exactly the same thing when she was like charging towards them on Drogon. She was just going to Dracarys the shit out of the whole of the Iron Fleet. But you've got to remember that a dragon flame reach is, there's a certain, there are logistics that you could argue behind why she might
what
have
you
made
should have
the
done is
decision.
Sure.
Yeah.
To be fair, there's logistics to how far a scorpion bolt can go too. They clearly aren't
Can I also say,
concerned with that. But.
Yeah,
can I say
they are massively. This is something Qyburn's been working on since he showed the weapon to Cersei a couple of seasons ago, and so that's clearly. I mean, do you remember what she was like with the wildfire, getting all that manufactured? So there's been some operation going on there where they've like bolstered these weapons to be these
dragon killing
incredible machines. Yeah,
I get that. There's still some heavily unrealistic aspects to them on moving boats, shooting at moving flying targets and nailing 3 shots in a row, and then of course missing every single one after that.
Right, I'm gonna read you a quote because this just for me shows the issue. The first death of Viserys can be exempted on the grounds that there was some kind of magical properties involved. But
it was a sneak attack nobody was expecting.
Right. For this scene, I want to for this quote, I want you to only think about the Rhaegal's death, because Viserion's was kind of tied in with magic. This is a quote from George R. R. Martin. One dragon in recorded history has been brought down from the air by a projectile, and it was a 1 in a million shot. A mature dragon in the air is virtually invulnerable. And end quote. The shot that he's referring to is, of course, I think Dawn, where it pierced the eye of the dragon, thus bringing it down. In this show, the dragons are so fucking vulnerable. Like it's just it couldn't be further from that quote.
Yeah, they are very vulnerable. Yeah.
There you go. Nonsense.
Yep.
Also, why haven't the dragons got any kind of armor? You'd think that two of them.
Yeah.
And you might think, oh, these are my children. I want to protect them. They're vulnerable from the ground. Let's build them some armor. But either way.
Maybe it's harder to fly with trees around you.
Maybe Drogon will be armored in the next episode.
I will say, considering, because this also didn't make sense to me, considering they showed the scorpions also shooting through the ships, why were those bolts smashing into it like cannonballs? if like, all right, so 2 things to say. Maybe that's how they were able to kill dragons, because those are some damn powerful bolts. The other thing I would say is, if that is how impressive those weapons really are, cannons would never have been invented, because those are way better than cannons and way less ridiculous. Yeah, it's like it was just crazy. Those bolts were smashing through both sides of the hull. It was crazy.
It would have made more sense if they did use cannonballs and one hit Rhaegal, and as Claire said, he was already injured, so it knocked him to the sea and he drowned or something like that. That would make sense, and then it would also make sense with the imminent barrage or the subsequent barrage on the ships. But either way,
sorry, continue, Calum.
No, I finished the point. Go ahead.
No, my question was going to be: is Rhaegal dead?
I would say so.
Yeah, I think he's dead.
Yeah.
Unless
All right, I'm not so
Cersei
sure.
pulls him out of the water with a chain. And...
No. I'm not talking about Thursday or anything. I'm just talking about Rhaegal himself. Like we saw Viserion, although already dead, blowing the fire through his, neck and everything like that. Rhaegal got what? Hit in the wing, hit in the neck, and hit in the belly, right?
Hitting the chest. Yeah.
I'm fairly certain
Yes, the
Rhaegal's
chest,
I think
the
it was
wing, and the neck.
I'm just wondering because they made that point. Are you sure he's dead? And then Euron says, "I saw him crash into the ocean and sink or whatever."
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so
I feel
wondering.
like he's got to be dead. If they bring him back, I'd actually think that was even shittier.
It was
Well, it's not like he can come back.
reasons.
I guess I don't know really what my point is, but it just drew me for a loop there.
No,
When
I mean,
you asked.
it's good that you question things though, because status quos ought to be questioned. So maybe you are correct.
The only other thing that I wanted to cover at Dragonstone was the dynamics between Varys, Tyrion, the conversation that they had with Daenerys prior to that, which was, look, I just want to save the world from tyranny, but obviously as viewers we're looking at her going down this path of potentially becoming a tyrant herself.
Which, by the way, I called that in this episode we'd see Varys having that conversation with Dany.
Yeah, you did actually.
You did. Yeah, you did.
So he fulfilled his promise. He did promise, look, if you start going that way and acting a bit crazy, I'll tell you. He did exactly that. And so is she going to kill him? She said she would burn him if he was disloyal to her.
I think he's a goner.
So that's our first prediction. Daenerys kills Varys.
So 2 things. One, I meant to mention it earlier, but I forgot. It's interesting that Daenerys has never actually herself killed anybody. You could argue, yes, she did. We saw her kill whites, but they're already dead people. So everybody else it's something that she's told people to do or she's done with her dragon. She's never actually killed a human being before, as far as I can recall. True or false?
I believe that's true, but
did she? No, I think you're right. I was gonna question if she killed someone at the Pit of Marine, but I don't think she did.
Well, she did lock those 2 people up in that big vault in
Oh
Cardiff.
yeah.
Did she close the door herself,
probably not. But I think even with the dragon thing, I think we're probably splitting hairs. But maybe you have a larger point if you wanna share.
No. That was just something that we were talking about earlier, and it popped into my head.
I didn't
have notes about it.
I would say and there are allusions to the fact that dragons are analogous to weapons, and I think that her killing people with dragons is pretty much her killing people.
It's just her pulling the trigger of the gun, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Essentially.
Gotcha.
That's my take on it. Anyway.
And what was the other one? Sorry, Claire. Go again. What were we talking about?
So we had the conversation between Varys, Daenerys, and Tyrion, where it's becoming clear that she will take what she feels is hers at any cost.
Okay, this was the other part, was going back to the dragon, Rhaegal being the one that died, Rhaegar being quote unquote Jon's father. There might be some significance there with the fact that if you link like the Stark's dogs to them and Dany's dragons to her, now that Rhaegar is out of the picture, like maybe that's a foreshadowing of Jon being like non-existent to her anymore. That being Jon's supposed father figure, which I don't believe. I would argue it a different way myself, but whatever.
Yeah.
So what the show is telling us at the moment is Varys is about to betray Daenerys because he's all about the people, the small folk, the children. And it seems like Tyrion, as Sansa pointed out, is a little bit scared of Daenerys, but also he's saying, look, this is where I'm pinning my flag, that I believe in her. She wants to be a good person. She wants to be a good ruler. So that's where we're at. Somebody's
I believe that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
maybe.
think she wants to hurt people. I think she's been more measured than Stannis, for fuck's sakes.
Mm.
Right? Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. You also touched on another theme potentially, which is that of betrayal.
Mm.
You know, Varys betraying Dany. We have Jaime supposedly betraying the North. There's one as well which I can't seem to put my finger on, but I know it's there somewhere. If it comes to me, I'll shout out. But yeah, just betrayal as a general theme, I guess.
Well, we're going to have those twists and turns for the next couple of episodes, definitely. It's not just going to be all battle. In fact, there will be a lot of that, but...
Here is a pop quiz about next episode. John's coming down the King's Road. Are we going to get Greywater Watch?
Well, should we save predictions for the end? Because we still have one scene.
It's not a prediction. It's a question. I just thought of it right now.
It's a question which is predicated on a prediction.
Maybe.
Don't argue with a bar. MP.
I think it's actually going to... I'd like to think that we'd be able to swing by the Riverlands and Greywater Watch, but I just think they're going to appear in the next episode.
Yeah, can we call? Cause I do actually have predictions that I want to share on this.
Yeah,
one.
go on then.
We have one scene left though to deal with first.
Right, let's just get over and done with then. There's a couple of scenes in King's Landing. We've got Cersei with Euron and the meat shield pouring into the Red Keep. This thing about the baby, which again is
shield.
This is brought up with Tyrion in the next scene, which is where they're on the battlements. They've got Missandei, and there's a lot of debate about this scene. Why didn't Missandei just drag Cersei over the edge? Why didn't the Scorpions just shoot at Drogon? He wasn't that far away. I think I counted maybe no more than 30 Unsullied. And that's not all she had with her. There's a lot, okay, these are like rules of parley. You don't do that because...
You also don't kill somebody, you don't kill the negotiating piece and dump them off a wall.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of...
Well, can I just quickly jump in on this? Yeah. Because there's a very... I'm not sure how obvious this is. I'm sure when I say either it'll be obvious or it won't. But there's something in my view that the writers have put in here that has to be expanded upon in the next episode, lest I completely lose all faith in the writing, which is this. Tyrion speaks to Cersei about the baby when Euron, the father, supposedly, has only found out mere hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're Euron at that moment, and you can obviously hear because you're right next to Cersei, if you're Euron, you're thinking, well, how does that guy know about my baby when I found out a few hours ago? And he's been in the North, and he's been in the North for the past 6 months at least.
My fear is that they will not address it.
If he doesn't see that as a clear and plain betrayal moving forward and act upon it, then I have problems.
Yeah,
which will be lamented, and a diatribe will follow in the next review if that isn't fucking
DJ.
Nice use. No, I was just gonna say nice use of diatribe. By the way, I was just gonna say, here's my. This is why I think they may not address it.
You're off camera, by the way, DJ.
Nope.
He's fine for me.
That's weird. Yeah, you know what? It keeps whatever. In either case, here's why I think they won't address it. One, because I don't think they're very good writers. Two, I don't think Euron is a very good character in this show. And three, they didn't even cut to his reaction. I think that if they were planning on doing something with this, they would have shown his reaction to Tyrion, even just a small, literally 1.5 second cut to his face.
Even a no reaction. But show his face.
Something, yeah. But they literally didn't show him. They literally moved past it as if.
Yeah.
So my fear is they're just going to play it off like Euron is just that stupid that he just wouldn't even notice that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because that's.
This is massively down to interpretation. It could even be that Tyrion marched right up to the wall, no, maybe Tyrion's getting his kind of calculated Tyrion back on again, and he knows that the best way to put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of their alliance, you can rule the seas, I'll rule the land, this Cersei Euron fucked up combo that we've got. Maybe Tyrion thought, okay, let me just do a little bit of damage here while I'm here. Let me just ruffle some feathers. So that could, it would be nice to think that had happened. Because again, it elevates Tyrion as a character again, and proves his worth. But I've got a horrible feeling that DJ's probably right. Writers won't have picked that up. They're not going. Not enough time. John or somebody will go in and explosively kill Euron in some very satisfying way on the screen for the viewers.
Tyrion could be smart enough and know Cersei well enough to know that, yes, she's pregnant, but as she's been wont to before, she's going to deny the fact that it's Jaime's, even though we had a few scenes where people now know that they are together. But for the populace at large, Tyrion would know that she's going to try to name somebody else as the father. And maybe you're right. He would just go up and do that. Okay, go ahead.
This is what I think. I think that Cersei isn't pregnant. She wasn't pregnant. She was never pregnant. She knows how to use a woman's weapons, and she's using the full artillery at the moment with as many people as possible. And the reason that I know this is, A, it's obvious that she's not showing by now. And even with wacky teleportation episodes that we've got, she's not showing at all. And we know that Gilly's kind of advancing in a pregnancy. Also, when Tyrion said to her, he pleaded about the children, this is about your children, you don't have to kill your child. Her reaction when she kind of put her nose up in the air was, that really hit home for Cersei, but not because she's pregnant, because she was, and still is, heartbroken over the loss of her 3 children and the fulfillment of that horrible Maggie the Frog prophecy. So I don't think she was ever pregnant. I think she's used it as a weapon, and everybody's, she's manipulated Jaime. The list goes on. It's like the gift that keeps on giving in a twisted way. She's manipulated Euron, Tyrion, Jaime, whoever else. Yes, I'm pregnant. It's made a difference in terms of what she wants from each of those relationships. So no, she was never pregnant.
Interesting.
I think that's probably true.
So,
anything else?
I have one quick thing about just a note that I thought it was interesting. Missandei's last words were Jacaerys, because she is, of course, from Nath, and they are known as the peace-loving. The people, they're basically Jainists. They are complete pacifists. So I thought, I either love that because it's a great sort of like, this complete pacifist last words were basically kill all these fuckers, or I hate it because it didn't make any sense. But in either case, just curious what you guys thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I had another point on Missandei, unless someone wants to jump on that particular thread.
Just very quickly, what I would say is, if you watch that, like I said, just watched it before we started chatting. If you look at Missandei in those last few moments before she says Dracarys, she's looking at Grey Worm. You can see her eyes move in the distance. She's looking at Grey Worm. You get to see his reaction, and then her eyes move distinctly to Daenerys when she says that. So this is a personal message from Missandei to Daenerys, and Daenerys is taking it that way. I've just been instructed by my most trusted advisor to burn them all. That is what's going to happen. Because she's got nothing to lose at this point, has she, Missandei? So short of grabbing Cersei and taking her over the wall with her, then those were her final words, which just gives. This is, I mean, one of the one of the things about the next episode, I don't know if you've seen the trailer. It's like 20 seconds, very quick.
It's for predictions because I've got one more thing on this scene.
It's not really a prediction.
Okay,
it's more of an observation. So
right.
now with Missandei being gone, not only is she her advisor, but she's also her kind of personal assistant, handmaid. What you see in the trailer for episode 5, the back of Daenerys' head, she distinctly looks quite bedraggled, and her hair's all like it's kind of like braids gone wild. So that kind of links in very much visually with this descent into madness, if that's the tact that they're going for.
Interesting.
That would be quite effective visually.
Yeah. But, here's my final thought on Missandei, although I do have one more point on King's Landing generally. On the Missandei issue and scene, one poignant observation and seriously quite regrettable observation that I made, unfortunately, which has me it had me awake for a few minutes that night, was that Missandei died in chains. She was freed by Dany, and she pledged her kind of entire being to this idea of freeing people from slavery, and freeing and breaking chains, and really really supporting the breaker of chains in Dany. Yet she, when it came down to her final moments, was in fact chained, which I thought was
good catch.
Particularly poignant.
Even Cersei walked past and was kind of like, so much for the breaker of chains. What did it mean for Missandei in the end? Really, she died the same way.
Yeah. Fairly regrettable. Last point on the King's Landing for me was just another point of mirror imagery, which I seem to enjoy making because I've made so many of them. Is that this scene for me and Dany approaching King's Landing harps back almost identically to her approach to Karth, in that with Karth she arrived at the gates with a disheveled army, completely destroyed from their previous battle, albeit the previous time with the elements and the desert. But nevertheless, she arrived before a city with significantly reduced army. And then the gates open, you see the city from without, and forth comes the city's representative or mouthpiece, as it were, and then negotiate before she's allowed in.
13?
Yeah.
13?
I mean, in the books, it didn't quite happen that way, because the 3 representatives came to her little camp, which was different in the show. Because in the show, they arrived at Karth and negotiated there, whereas in the books they negotiated from Daenerys' little place. But yeah, the mirror imagery there of approaching a closed city, and being kind of greeted by their representatives, and we know how that one went. So I wonder if there's any kind of any predictions that can be made on that point.
Anyone?
No, not me.
Speaking of predictions, we can move on. We can move to the predictions. I have a couple, though, but I'm willing to wait if someone else has a burning desire to expound there.
I've never been much for predictions, so I'll let you guys take it from here.
I have hopes and dreams, but I mean, I don't know if I have predictions.
Yeah.
I will say, let me go with this. There's still a lot which I love. This is why I didn't give this one such a bad rating. There's so much that I love about Bran saying, "But I'm not the Lord of Winterfell." Arya saying, "That's not me. That's not who I am," which I know is a Lyanna line, but it's still something that's appealing to me. The fact that when they have their talk, the camera cuts away and you don't actually see what was said between them. The fact that Rhaegal dies. And there's lots of stuff that gives me so much hope for the next couple episodes that I'm thrilled. I'm not scared.
I actually do have one prediction, and it's sort of the reverse. I predict disappointment.
I predict the predictable, which will be, I've already mentioned. I think we need to see Arya take somebody's face. I think we need to, in terms of satisfying show watchers and kind of feeding into fan fiction, we need to see Wildfire. I think what we're going to see is Cersei using that meat shield, and somehow there's going to be a wildfire incident. She's going to completely blame, because what Dany thought she'd come up with this idea. Let all the people think, I'll do this. When she was talking about a strategy with Varys and Tyrion, it's all about who the people see as like the liberator and the one that tried and what have you. And I think Cersei will trick Daenerys into thinking that her dragons have somehow triggered the wildfire. She's murdered the majority of the population in King's Landing, and the survivors will look at Daenerys as this evil tyrant conqueror who killed us all, and that will probably be the thing that just ends Daenerys's ambition, because it's like, what's the point? I haven't really got a claim. Everybody hates me. All I wanted to do was the right thing and for everybody to love me, like they did. I should have just never come here. I should have stayed in Essos. I would have been much better, tucked up in bed with
I still feel like that's a huge possibility, as Dany just flies back to Essos, where she's already established herself. And
yeah, maybe.
I agree with you that Wildfire definitely has to play. But I didn't have it in detail like you just did, which I think is unbelievable. I like the way you laid it out.
You've just reminded me of something as well, but go on.
I think that there's going to be also some predictable but kind of satisfying stuff. I think Jon will, when it comes to who's got to be taken out, Euron's got to be taken out. Who would be the best person to do it? Well, he didn't get the Night King kill, so maybe he can do the heroic, taking the other big bad in terms of the show, which is Euron. So Jon gets that kill. I think we're going to get some form of Clegane Bowl involving Arya and the Hound, maybe subconsciously kind of tag teaming, sort of something's going to happen there. But I think there will be some betrayal, including, I don't exactly know what that will be, but I think the players will be Jaime and Varys will be the characters that they've got more betrayal potential that's been built up in this season.
As far as I have a few things. As far as Arya and the Hound go, I think their relationship is quite similar to the Fellowship in Lord of the Rings, in that they are companions on the journey, but not necessarily companions in the destination. So I think that they will accompany each other on the route to King's Landing, but I don't necessarily think that she will play a part in Clegane Bowl.
Who's this?
Aside from her, aside from her setting it up in terms of the Mountain hurting her or killing her when she tries to kill Cersei, but I don't think she'll actually be involved in the fighting itself. That's the first thing. The second thing is, have you guys seen the trailer? Because this is a point on the trailer.
Yeah.
I don't think I have yet, honestly.
It's a very minor point, so I don't think anyone will be too annoyed. Basically, in the trailer, there's a very short little scene, I suppose, where we see Euron on his ship and he looks up. I won't mention anything else about that, just in case it's deemed to be a spoiler. But for those who know the extra element of that particular scene, I think that it's a bit of subterfuge there. I don't think that what they're hinting at is actually going to happen. My view is what he's looking at is a barrage from the Iron Fleet, the other Iron Fleet, the Greyjoys and Yara, whatever she's called in the show. Yeah, but I don't think that I think the barrage from Yara will destroy the fleet, but I don't think it'll kill Euron. I agree with Claire that Jon has to kill Euron, but his fleet will be destroyed by Yara. That's go ahead.
Just like Jon had to kill the Night King.
Yeah, and then the last point I'd make in terms of prediction is that Dany has lost her children, or at least the majority thereof. Therefore, is she in need of some second sons? That wasn't a joke, by the way.
I think Danny's going to be knocked up before the end of there. There's my prediction, but I've said that before. And again, I will say I think we have to see Mira Reed and Greywater Watch. I think that's going to happen. I know DJ's shaking his head. I can see him.
Too wishful. Too wishful.
It has to. It has to. They're passing right through there. Truth will be revealed.
I think they'll teleport right outside the gates of King's Landing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of teleportation coming up in this episode.
We've had Howland Reed. We've had mention of him being the best friend. Shit is going down.
Also, it really surprised me that actually, if you remember back to one thing I do remember from episode 1 was Jon and Daenerys trooping into Winterfell with all the Unsullied, and there was fucking thousands of them. However, Grey Worm said, it's only half of them that have gone. So the other half that didn't have the fiery arrows must have been on the day shift or something, because they managed to save half of the Unsullied.
And
they slept
through the whole thing. They slept through
not
the
long.
whole
No,
battle.
no, I don't do nights. I'm not doing the long night. No. They and also there are some Dothraki, and so there's Dothraki, there's Unsullied. Yes, they're depleted and completely, very mature. I thought of Sansa to suggest just give them a bit of a break. What's the rush, really? Wouldn't it be better to have them more refreshed?
The rush is the episodes remaining.
Yeah, exactly. So there's there's a fair amount of numbers here for this big mashup in King's Landing in the next episode, especially if you consider them somehow hooking up with the Knights of the Vale and this Prince of Dawn that's been mentioned. Everybody could end up descending on King's Landing, similar to how they did in Winterfell, but rather than battling against, the battle being the living and the dead, it's going to be everybody against Cersei because everybody hates her. So I think we're going to see some really horrific, tragic scenes of the small folk in.
Let's all just give Cersei a thumbs up, though. She's playing a good game.
And actually, if you look back on this horrible, hateful character in terms of the TV show, don't mess with her, because everybody, I've seen compilation clips of actually what does happen if you push Cersei's buttons. She's playing the Game of Thrones, and she knows that you win or you die. So everybody,
I think, we were talking earlier. Oh, it's so sad that Jon didn't get to do the killing of the this and the that. But I mean, even in the books, though, the women are set up to be the heroes of this story.
Yeah.
I think, anyways. I mean,
up until they started making Dany crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll say, instead of heroes, say powerful, equally powerful as the men. Like Sansa's probably the weakest seeming still at the moment, but Arya we know is doing good. Dany's obviously done good.
Brienne,
Catelyn was Brienne. I mean, why do we doubt the women characters doing, the whole thing about the Stark's history was they were saved by the women folk, the last women. So I can see that being Arya and Sansa this time too, and it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, my view is slightly different. I think that there's two elements to this. The first is I've fucking forgotten the first one. It's 3 a.m. here, so bear with me a second. What was it? What was I going to say? I've lost it. Continue. I'll find it again.
I was finished with what I have to say, so anybody else go ahead.
I have one last question for MP. And
what's up?
What are you gonna do when they don't go to Greywater Watch, and when the show ends with us knowing and that Jon is in fact the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna?
Right, I've got it again. I'm gonna hijack this.
You ask me this all the time. It's all just about the books.
Right. So, So your point about the females having the power. Again, it's 3 a.m. here, so my coherence is diminishing rapidly. Firstly, I think that power is genderless. I think that there isn't necessarily a a direction that the power is going in terms of male or female. I think the reason that females are seemingly more powerful more frequently now is playing on the idea of war, and that generally speaking throughout history, men have died in much vaster numbers compared to females in war. So now what we have is kind of the aftermath, and it's only the females that are left to hold the power. Because if you think about the history of Thrones, all of the men who would hold the power now are dead. You know, so that's what I think they're playing on, is that the power will fall upon whoever is able to control it and whoever is able to adopt it.
But we also have the inner monologue, well, at least within the books, of these women characters and what they're thinking. And yeah, I totally agree with you. Historically, I mean, men go out to battle and die, and the women, you know, create new men, and then the men take over again. But this seems different to me.
Well, even
more like the story itself seems very built up to empower women, like just the whole.
That is definitely true. Can I also throw out there, hey Marwin, can I also throw out there that there's I think part of this is not to say these not to say these women aren't powerful, but there's a little bit of an illusion too, because the women seem that much more powerful because of the traditional gender roles. So because women are generally seen less powerful in these, you know, especially in these old traditions, when they are powerful, is as equally as powerful as men, they seem even more powerful because they've somehow broken the bonds of those traditional gender roles.
Yeah. Well, I think with George Martin, what he does so effortlessly yet so perfectly is that his and he said this before in an interview, when he's creating a character, he doesn't think to himself, is this person male or female? He just thinks, what does this person do? What are their characteristics? And then the gender falls naturally therefrom. The point I'm making is that what he does so well is that it doesn't matter what gender the character is. From whether they're male or female, we have characters who range from whores on the one hand, whether they're sexual whores or political whores or whatever, male, female, all the way up to queens and everything in between. And the gender, in many ways, is almost the least impactful aspect to their character. And that I think is a credit to Martin, in that he can write such diverse characters, both in terms of characteristics, but also in terms of prominence.
Yeah. No, I really like that. No, that's good.
Yes, he does have a skill at writing female characters, and DJ, nice try.
What happened there? Did I miss something?
No, earlier with MP and what are you going to do when?
I really do want to know. I can't wait to see your reaction when they don't go anywhere near Greywater Watch.
They have to. They're marching down the King's Road. They're passing Greywater Watch.
Oh, sweet summer child.
They're also passing the Twins, but they won't fucking go in there, will they?
Yeah, they've already passed Greywater Watch a whole bunch of times too. So.
And also, they're not. We've already established this. They're not passing.
John was on dragons.
What you're doing here is you are erroneously assuming that they are walking the King's Road, when in actual fact they are clearly going to teleport, as the evidence suggests.
Exactly.
So they won't even be near it. Never mind.
Do you think somehow? I don't know how this could possibly happen, apart from teleportation. But I just get the impression that Sansa really wants to be there to confront Cersei. And I almost wonder whether or not this is something where, I mean, she would have to die for Arya to take Sansa's face, and to just appear in front of Cersei and be the, I don't know.
The younger, beautiful queen that's going to rise to the throne. Gotcha.
I just kind of, I think that would be very cathartic if you saw... Yeah, for everything that's been built up with Sansa and what she's become in the show, how satisfying that would be for her to be able to stand in front of Cersei and stand her own ground. You know, after all of that shit that she went through with when she was basically a prisoner in King's Landing after Ned died, I just think that would be quite satisfying. But how that would ever happen, and whether or not Sansa will ever leave Winterfell, like we say, we've got like what 3 hours of this left, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Are both of these next ones an hour and a half each?
I think so. Yeah, about an hour and 20 minutes. I think. Yeah.
Don't forget that like 20 minutes of that is the trailers in the beginning part, and then the interview with D&D at the end.
No, I think running time, like total running time, is like an hour and 20. So it'll end up being like what, nearly 2 hours, probably, with breaks and things.
They don't have breaks in the US, I don't think.
Wait, you guys have like intermissions?
Yeah, we have commercial breaks.
They have commercials.
Do you really?
If you watch it there,
wait, you have commercials?
Yeah.
Oh my god, you poor souls!
I know. I couldn't. I one time I didn't realize that the commercials were isolated to the UK. So when the commercials came on, I thought this was the case for everyone. So I went on Twitter and just got spoiled instantly on one of the points in episode 1.
No.
Because obviously the US were tweeting it live and they didn't have breaks, so they were 2 minutes ahead or whatever. But alas, we shall continue.
Yep. I think we've reached the end.
I think we have.
There's 2 things I want to say at the end to just kind of conclude all of my fucking ramblings.
That's
the third thing actually. The first is that, again, I want to reiterate the point I made at the start, which is that despite my criticisms of the show, it's still for me far and above any other show I've ever seen.
Yep.
Both in terms of in terms of everything. I can't be bothered to go through every single element to the show. But just because the reason I'm so critical is because I'm such a fucking fan, and I have never been so invested in another world. Maybe Tolkien's in a similar sense. But the fact is, I love the show, and the reason that I'm criticizing it so harshly is because of that. The second thing is, which builds from that, is that I'm not about, just because the show is getting really bad at the moment, I'm not about to abandon it because faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens.
Oh, I love it.
I can't take credit for that.
I'm so excited for the last 2 episodes. I mean,
I didn't even cite that.
I know the show's
the real people know where it comes from.
Seasons, but I'm so pumped for the last 2 episodes. I'm so excited for it. I just can't. Like,
do you know the last episode's title is Greywater Watch? True story.
That's hilarious.
I can't stop giving you shit.
That is the funniest thing I've heard all week.
No, that's fine.
I love you.
We will talk next time on our next review, and we will see. And then
we will definitely see.
We will.
If I can just get a word in edgeways, I would end by saying, I think they could have done a better job with the same budget, the same input, the same performances from the cast. So something's gone wrong somewhere, because I do believe they could have made this better than they have.
I can recommend one way they could have made it better is fire the entire writing staff and hire one man, and you would have been golden.
That man's name was George?
That man's name is George.
Yeah.
Amazing how he can write. It just smiles better than that entire staff. I don't know how he does it.
It's amazing. He's so phenomenal. It's just unbelievable. I just love it.
Enough sucking George's dick. Let's get going.
Yeah.
that seems as apt a place to end as any.
Always.
All right. Love you guys. We will talk soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.